The most dangerous snake in North America. Well, you're probably afraid of the wrong snake. The one that bites the most people in America almost never kills anybody. Meanwhile, the animal sitting at number one on this list carries inch-long fangs, and a single strike from it pumps in enough venom to kill 5 or 6 grown men. Roughly 8,000 Americans get bit by a venomous snake every year, and about 5 of them die. The snake responsible for putting most of these 8,000 people in the hospital ain't the same snake that puts most of them in the grave. From the little copperhead colored one hiding in leaves in your own backyard to the 8-foot giant one carrying the biggest fangs in the country, here are the 8 most dangerous snakes in North America, ranked by the damage they can actually do. I'm Mr. V, and welcome back to the Untamed Lens. When I say the most dangerous, I mean the whole picture. The venom itself, the size of the dose a single bite puts in, the reach the fangs delivering it, and the chance of you actually running into that snake in this country all add up together. Rank the animals honestly, and I'm 4 on this list. Well, here we go, let's get into it. Number 8, the copperhead. Every year in this country, the copperhead bites more people than any other venomous snake, by a mile. Somewhere around 2,900 to 3,000 people get bitten by one every year. That works out roughly 1/3 of every venomous snake bite in America. And yet, the fatality rate on the copperhead bite runs about 1 in 10,000. Do the math on that, and it comes out about 1 person dying from a copperhead bite every 4 years in the whole United States. So why is the copperhead on that list at all, man? Because bad and deadly are 2 different measurements. The copperhead is a snake you're actually the most likely to get bit by. And an old saying up in Appalachia goes that a copperhead won't kill you, but it will make you wish it had. Its venom tears up the tissue right where the fangs go in. The skin swells up and turns black. Blood blisters form up along the arm or the leg, and folks are usually laid up for 2 to 4 weeks before the swelling goes down. Bite a small child or somebody with bad heart, and the odds get worse in a hurry, though. The copperhead had 2 habitats that puts it in front of a boot more than any other snake in the country. First, it wears about the best camouflage in the American woods next to the military special forces. No, the color is copper and tan bands, the exact color of a dead leaf, so people stepping on them without even seeing them. Second, when the copperhead feels a foot coming its way, it don't run. It freezes flat and trusts its camouflage. That right here is the difference between a rattlesnake and a copperhead in your yard. A rattlesnake is going to tell you it's there. A copperhead lets you put your boot down on it. That's number 8. The bite will almost surely, you'll survive from the snake bite. Now, the one still ahead of it is a bite you probably survive too, but the reason isn't the snake itself. Number 7 is the eastern coral snake. The eastern coral snake is a small, brightly banded snake, red and yellow and black rings with a couple of feet long. It's mostly found across Florida and pine woods of the southeast. It's a shy little animal that spends most of its life underground and almost never bites a person. In an average year, U.S. Poison Control gets fewer than 100 coral snake reports for the whole country. On the raw encounter numbers, this animal would rank at the bottom of any list, but drop for drop, its venom is a completely different animal from anything else in this ranking so far. The copperhead and the cottonmouth and every rattlesnake we're going to talk about tonight carry a venom that tears up your blood and cooks your tissues where it goes in. The coral snake venom is built for a different target. It shuts down your nerves. It goes for the wiring between your brain and your muscles. And enough of it gets into you, the muscles that pull your lungs open just stop working. You quit breathing, and if nobody's watching you, that's the end of it. One thing about the coral snake makes it more dangerous every year that goes by, not less. A drug company called Venom made the only American antivenom venom for coral snake bites. And back in 2006, they stopped producing it. The FDA keeps extending the shelf life on the old vials past their original expiration dates, but the supply is still thinning out. On a fresh coral snake bite in America right now, the hospital may have to hunt around the country for a dose of the treatment that saves your life. Now, in June of 2006, a 38-year-old man in the United States was bitten by an eastern coral snake. He didn't go to the hospital, and you know what happened? He died within a couple hours. That was the first documented coral snake death in this country in over 40 years. Almost nobody dies from a coral snake bite these days because people go get treated. If the treatment ever runs all the way out, the number's going to change fast. And that is why the coral snake sits above the copperhead on this list. It is the bite that hides its damage until it's too late. Your muscles stop working. Now, if you're still with me, hit that like button, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. This channel exists to walk you through exactly this kind of thing, what's really out there and what's really gonna get you. The 6 snakes still ahead on this list are bigger, meaner, or more common than the 2 you just heard about. So number 6 is the tiger rattlesnake. The tiger rattlesnake lives in one place in the whole United States. That's the desert country of southern Arizona, up in the Rocky Hills around Tucson, Arizona. It's a smaller rattlesnake. The average adult runs about 2 foot long with a slim body, a small little head, and a rattle that sounds higher and thinner than the big rattlesnakes. You've heard it on the nature shows, I'm sure. Look at one and it does not look like the winner of anything. Now, that same little snake carries something remarkable. Researchers who study snake venoms rank the tiger rattlesnake as having the most poisonous venom drop for drop of any rattlesnake in America. Scientists at the University of South Florida, they sequenced the tiger's rattlesnake genes back in 2021 and put its venom at roughly 40 times more toxic drop for drop than most other rattlesnakes on this continent. Something the size of a house cat is carrying a knockout drug that would lay down a bigger animal 40 times over. The reason the tiger snake or the tiger rattlesnake doesn't sit higher on this list is the yield. The snake carries almost none of that venom, maybe 10 milligrams per bite on the high end. That's like a shotgun loaded with 1 pellet. If the pellet hits you square, it's bad news. The venom itself does 2 jobs at once. It shuts down the wiring to your muscles the way the coral snake does, and it tears the muscle fibers themselves apart at the same time. The tiger rattlesnake is also night active in the summer, so it's crossing the same washes and rocky trails hikers use, and it hides in the exact crevice people put their hands into. Documented human bites are rare, though, and confirmed human deaths from this snake are essentially unheard of. Both of these things are only true because this animal lives in a remote country and it doesn't run into people much. You put a healthy population of tiger rattlesnakes into Phoenix, Arizona suburb, and the number will look different in a hurry. That is a small snake with a scary chemistry set. Number 5 doesn't need any chemistry. It eats your leg with what it's got. That's number 5, the Cottonmouth. You probably know this snake as the water moccasin. It's the only snake on this list that spends most of its life in the water. Cottonmouth lives in swamps and slow rivers on the southeast, Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas, all through the Gulf states. And they're the only snake in America that swims for a living. Adults typically run 3 to 4 foot long. They're thick-bodied. They're dark tanned and nearly black on top. Open one's mouth and inside is bright cotton white, which is where the name comes from. The snake has a reputation for chasing people down, dropping out of trees, and into their fishing boats. I've had all that happen to me before. Now, the scientists who spend their lives studying this animal say almost all of that is folklore. Well, the scientists need to go fishing with me. Now, a cottonmouth does not chase people. Yes, it does. Well, it shadows you. What it does is stand its ground and open that bright white mouth as a warning that says, "Leave me alone," which I don't mind doing. It will bite you if you keep coming, and that's where this snake earns its rank. The cottonmouth venom is built for a different job than the most snake venoms. This stuff doesn't shut you down and it doesn't paralyze you. It cooks you. It cooks the tissue right where it goes in. Muscle cells rupture and the blood vessels come apart. The flesh around the bite goes to rot. A single bite can pump up to 300 milligrams of that stuff into a person. And even with the best hospital treatment, wounds sometimes go on to need surgery and skin grafts. Severe bites have cost people's fingers, toes, and pieces of their lower leg. Deaths from a cottonmouth are rare. Modern antivenom handles the bite well enough that the fatality numbers stay small. The reason this snake sits higher than the coral snake is the odds you're actually going to run into one. Anybody who fishes or hunts or wades a boat launch across the southeast is sharing water with cottonmouths. And about 25% of the bites this snake gives are dry bites with no venom, which means 75% of them are the real thing. That is the snake that ruins a leg, not the life. Coming up next is a big snake with the biggest range of anything still ahead on this list. And if you live east of the Mississippi River, you live in its country. Number 4, the timber rattlesnake. If you live east of the Mississippi River, this timber rattlesnake is in your country. The range it covers is about 30 states, from New Hampshire all the way down to northern Florida, and west into East Texas and Minnesota. Adults commonly run 3 to 5 feet, some over 6. Thick bodies, dark V-shaped bands across yellow, gray, or nearly black backgrounds. They spend the winter in dens dug into the rocky hillsides, sometimes with dozens of snakes packed together, and they come out in the spring to hunt. The timber rattlesnake carries not 1 ounce of venom recipe, but 4 different ones, depending on where it lives. Scientists studying this snake have mapped them out. The northern population up in the mountains from Pennsylvania on north carries a straightforward blood and tissue venom. It's bad, but it's the standard rattlesnake formula. Down through Louisiana and Arkansas, the southern population carries a venom loaded with a nerve toxin similar to the one you get in the Mojave rattlesnake and the coral snake. It's the same species, but the chemistry is different depending on the state. Some populations runs a hybrid of both, meaning they have both. Every timber rattlesnake bite has to be treated as an emergency because from the outside, you can't tell which recipe you just got dosed with. A big timber rattlesnake can put 200 to 400 milligrams of venom into a bite. The southern population version adds nerve failure on top of the northern population straight tearing damage. In August of 2025, a hiker on the trails of Savage Gulf State Park in Grundy County, Tennessee, picked up a timber rattlesnake he found on the path, took a bite to the hand, and died at the hospital a few hours later. Back in August of 2019, a rattlesnake researcher named William Marty Martin died at his home in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. He was 80 years old, and he had studied timber rattlers for most of his life. The bite that killed him come from one of his own captive snakes the day before. This animal gets called docile. Most of the time it will not strike unless you push it, but when it does, it delivers a killing dose. Its saving grace is that it lives in the woods and it warns you. It rattles hard and it holds a coil, giving you every chance to back away. Ignore that warning and you're in trouble. That is the big rattlesnake in the woods east of the river. The next one lives out west in the desert country, and the folks who work around it will tell you it is the one they respect the most in the whole Southwest. Number 3 is the Mojave rattlesnake. The Mojave rattlesnake lives out in the deserts of the American Southwest, southeastern California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and West Texas, and down into Mexico. Adults run 2 to 4 feet. They look a whole lot like a western diamondback with black and white rings on the tail, and the average person on a hike can't really tell them apart. These snakes live in the dry brush country and the flats, and they hunt at night in the summertime. What makes the Mojave rattlesnake a completely different problem from every rattlesnake we talked about so far, is what's in the venom gland. The other rattlesnakes on this list mostly tear up your tissue and your blood. The desert rattlesnake carries a venom that goes into the nervous system the same way a coral snake bite does. And he does that on top of the tissue damage. It shuts down your connection between your brain and your breathing muscles. Not every Mojave rattlesnake carries this nerve poison either. These snakes kind of screwed up with their the poison stuff they, right? Well, researchers have documented 2 main venom recipes across the range, and they call them type A and type B. Type A is the paralyzed version, most common across California, Nevada, Utah, and most Arizona. Central Arizona is where the type B mostly lives. That's a standard tissue destruction version instead. The Mojave carries a hybrid of both. When a person gets bitten, they do not know which version they just got bit by. Well, the difference between the two can change the whole treatment. A bite from type A, that rattlesnake, can look mild for the first hour with hardly any swelling and not much pain to speak of. Then the person starts having trouble breathing and swallowing gets hard. And moving, well, it takes a whole lot of effort to move. By that time, the venom's already deep. This is why the oldest desert hands out in Arizona and Nevada respect this snake more than the western diamondback that lives in the same country. They've seen what a Mojave rattlesnake bite could do to somebody who was fine an hour before. Doctors have documented fatal bites from this animal in the United States, and modern antivenom handles most of them if the person gets to hospital in time. That is a small desert rattlesnake with the venom of a coral snake and the yield of a real rattler. Number 2 doesn't need any of that. It just needs to be everywhere. Number 2 is the western diamondback rattlesnake. The western diamondback rattlesnake is the snake most Americans picture when somebody says the word rattlesnake. It has a big, thick body, colored brown to gray, sharp diamond patterns down the back, a tail banded in black and white rings, and a rattle you can hear across the damn yard. Adults run 3 to 5 feet, some of them past 6 feet, and this animal lives from Arkansas across Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. I'm going to start naming a lot of states, but we're going to leave it. It's just about everywhere out there. Roughly 80% of the Texas Gulf Coast is diamondback country. And the same goes for the Big Bend region out in West Texas and the Sonora Desert across the border. The western diamondback gets to number 2 for one reason above all the others. It lives where people lives. Compare where the humans and the rattlesnake overlap on a map, and no other rattlesnake covers as much of the overlap as this one does. The venom is straight tissue and blood attack. A single bite can pump 250 to 800 milligrams into you, well over the lethal dose for a grown adult. The flesh around the bite swells hard and turns dark. Muscle underneath starts breaking down, and the blood loses its ability to clot. Let alone, well, an untreated bite from a big western diamondback runs a fatality rate of 10 to 20%. Now, with modern hospital care, that number drops way down, but the tissue damage stays. Fingers, hands, and lower limbs get lost. They put them in a little bag and ship them away from you. The western diamondback is also more excitable than most rattlesnakes. It stands its ground, throws that S-shaped coil, holds the rattle, and it strikes fast when it decides to. Texas documents show around 950 venomous snake bites a year, and this animal counts for the majority of them. The state averages 1 or 2 snake bite deaths a year, and the western diamondback is usually the one holding the pen. Medical researchers have historically credited this snake with more human fatalities than any other rattlesnake in the country's records, and it comes down to how much of America it lives in. That is the rattlesnake that shares your fence line across half the country. The last snake on this list lives in fewer states, but nothing else you're gonna hear about can put as much venom into you as this one bite. That's number 1, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake is the largest venomous snake in North America, and it's not even close. Adults commonly run between 4 to 6 feet. Big males push 7 feet, and the largest one on record stretched over 8 foot from nose to rattle. A 6-foot eastern diamondback weighs around 10 pounds. It's as thick as a grown man's arm at the middle of the body, like right in here. And it can strike from a coil out to about a third of its own length. Its home range covers the pine forest from North Carolina down through Florida and west of the Mississippi River. Florida sits right in the heart of that range. Every measurement that goes into being dangerous, this animal wins. The fangs are the longest of any rattlesnake in the world. A big eastern diamondback carries fangs pushing 1 inch, curved like hollow needles, folded flat inside the roof of its mouth until the moment it strikes. Those fangs swing forward on a hinge and drive down through the flesh. On every one of them, it's got a hollow tube plumbed straight to the venom glands, the size of a walnut. The venom yield is part of what puts the snake above anything else on the continent. An average eastern diamondback pumps up around 400 to 450 milligrams of venom in a single bite. Researchers have measured big ones, delivering as much as 800 to 1,000 milligrams in one strike. The lethal dose for a grown adult human is somewhere between 100 to 150 milligrams. A single bite from a big eastern diamondback carries enough venom to kill 5, 6, or even 7 people all at once. But good thing it only bites one person at a time, that I know of. That is what makes the worst bite in this country. The venom itself breaks apart the red blood cells and eats through the vessel walls. Flesh around the bite starts to dissolve. People bleed from the bite site, and they bleed from the gums and their eyes. Untreated, a bite from this snake runs a fatality rate. Medical researchers put somewhere between 10 and 20%, with older sources that put as high as 30%. Together with its cousin, the western diamondback, this animal is responsible for about 95% of every snakebite death recorded in the United States. Modern antivenom saves most of the people who get to the hospital in time. So even so, survivors talk about the bite the same way. It's a sharp burn, then the whole limb goes hot, and it starts swelling and dark. Then it goes dark. Then the taste of copper comes up in your mouth. Nothing else on this continent brings this size, these fangs, and this venom load together in the same animal. And its home is somebody's backyard from North Carolina down through Florida. That's the honest #1 in North America. If you like this episode, go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode of The Untamed Lens. I'm Mr. V, and I'll see you in the next one.